Now, there's a lot of people out there that want me to address other names. There's one particular person who will remain nameless, and I will not deny it. I think he's a fat, no-good bastard who I despise to the core. That is not Marcellus Wiley I'm talking about. It ain't hard to figure out who the hell I'm talking about. I'm where I'm at. That particular individual is where he's at. And I'll leave it at that.
Again, we've spent a lot of this week talking about the cowardice of people in foreign countries using babies as human shields and women as human shields and all of that. And that is wrong what Hamas is doing. I don't want to diminish that in any way with these comments, but this is the same type of, or obviously not as bad, but it's the same type of cowardice Stephen A. Smith is showing here. He doesn't want to take on Marcellus Wiley because he can't be honest.
This video is brought to you by Save the Storks. Save the Storks, ladies and gentlemen, is a pop-up Save the Storks event right here in Scottsdale, Arizona at my headquarters. We're doing a joint event, so it's a meet and greet with me, and also you'll be able to see the state-of-the-art medical mobile clinic that Save the Storks has, and you will not be disappointed. I want to give you just some quick facts, and then we're going to get to the video. But the medical mobile clinic offers free pregnancy tests, STI tests, and ultrasounds for young women. 4 out of 5 young women that get onto the medical mobile clinic or go into the medical mobile clinic. It's pretty much an RV that they've outfitted like a medical clinic. And 4 out of 5 young women that go on, they leave making the decision to keep their child. There's 97 buses in 34 states, and it's bridging the gap between women and the medical clinic. One thing I love about the medical mobile unit is that they pull them right up in front of, Planned Parenthood and these other places and give women the option to get on, to get good information, to be heard, not be coerced. I mean, all of the things that we would hope for our daughters, our mothers, or anybody that have been found, in a situation where they're experiencing an unplanned pregnancy. So I want you guys to go to Eventbrite. The link is in the description section. It's on Saturday, November the 4th from 11 to 1 p.m. Tickets are only $2 on Eventbrite. The only reason we have them at $2 is because people want to play fraud and they want to buy 1,000 tickets to throw off our event, but you're going to pay $2,000 to do that. So make sure you go. The link is in the description section. We're going to have a really good time right here at the Officer Tatum headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona. Save the Storks and the Officer Tatum. We're doing an event. Make sure you show up, like and subscribe to the channel. Y'all already know what to do. Let's get into this. All right, I got a special guest coming in, and I wanted to change gears a little bit because I just been going hard on Israel and what's been going on, and I kind of want to shift gears and talk about sports. And I'm gonna set the tempo here because I really like what Deion Sanders is doing in Colorado. I think he's an amazing coach. But my brother, who's gonna come on right now, has a different opinion, and I just had to hear what his opinions were, and I want to have that discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Jason Whitlock. So Jason has a show, and I believe it's on the Blaze, and it's called Fearless. And Jason, welcome to the show, man. I want to talk about football because obviously you play football at the highest level, and you have a lot of experience. You've been around a lot of professional athletes. You've been around college athletes. And so I think you're the best person to talk to about this. Now, I think Deion Sanders is doing a tremendous job there in Colorado. I think he's playing a little bit of favoritism towards his sons, but I get it. But you wrote an article where you criticized Deion Sanders, and I want to hear your take. So what's your thoughts on Deion Sanders, and why do you feel that he is not who I think he is at Colorado?
And, man, I'm glad you called me up to talk about this because you're the perfect person to talk to about this because I love that you're on the other side of this argument because, Brandon, I'm right. You played at Arizona, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And your uncle, Jack Tatum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is awesome. And I almost want to know why you think he's a great coach given all of your real-world, real-life football experience. I'm a little bit baffled that you can't see through all of the sizzle and not see that there's not nearly as much substance to what Deion's doing.
Well, let me just say just a little bit of my perspective. I think Deion Sanders was an incredible football player, obviously a Hall of Fame football player, and I feel like that his strong point is that he resonates with the players. I mean, from the outside looking in, I don't play for the team,
Yep.
but it seems like he's a coach. He's a player's coach. You know, he loves his players. He rally around his players. He motivate them on the sideline. He hug them. He treat them like they're his boys. And I think that attracts a lot of young athletes, even like myself, that you want a coach that kind of is in the culture, that played in the NFL, that succeeded in the NFL, and that's trying to build kind of like a team around that perspective. And I will say this, he does have an unfair advantage because of the transfer portal, because back in the days, it would take you forever to build a team like that. But he has gone on to win, I don't know, 300% more games than they won last year in a team that only had one win.
Well, I just don't think what he's doing is built to last, and I think he's getting way too much credit, and you've already made the point, like, this isn't the same kind of rebuilding job that Bill Snyder did at Kansas State or any number of coaches have done, you know, people that won at Northwestern or whatever, because we're in this era where you can completely turn over your roster. And so he didn't come in and coach the existing players better than the previous coach. He just brought in a bunch of new players. And so, and that's the time we're living in. That's what the transfer portal has created. But I just don't think what he's doing is actually sustainable, because I don't think it's built on much substance. So the blueprint for coaches, and maybe the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness is going to totally change the blueprint for coaches. But the blueprint for coaches has never been anything like what we're seeing from Deion Sanders. Being relatable and being part of the culture and everybody's best friend, that's never been, or everybody's uncle or whatever. That's never been what the great coaches are about. Great players, generally speaking, do not make great coaches. It's actually mediocre players who have to focus in on the fundamentals, and every detail matters for them when they were playing either in high school or low-level college football. Those are the guys that actually know how to teach and pass on all the little details it takes to be successful. The super talented athletes like Deion Sanders, and if you go look at Deion Sanders' college and professional and even high school career, his talent allowed him to not care nearly as much about the fundamentals and the details as players that were less talented than him. And so a lot of what Deion is saying and we're seeing in film of what he's telling the team, it's not the actual advice he followed as a player. And look, young people can see through the BS. And so, hey, they're 4-2 right now, but when adversity hits, there's going to be problems.
Jason, I want to bring you into one more segment if you have time.
Yeah, no
right?
problem.
Ran out of time.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so hold the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to Jason Whitlock. He's the podcast host of Fearless on The Blaze. Hold the phone. I'll be back after the break. I want to welcome back to the show Jason Whitlock. Jason, we were talking about Deion Sanders. I think we see it a little differently, but I do understand your point. You know, you made an incredible point by saying Deion Sanders' form of leadership and his coaching style wasn't something that he was coached under, and he ended up being a Hall of Fame football player. And I will say being 4-2 is a pretty impressive record. And let me just give him a little kudos to this point. I do see what you're saying about the traditional coaching style, but he must be doing something to get these boys to play when their back's against the wall in these close games. Now, they're nowhere near on the level of an Oregon. I thought they weren't on the level of USC. They almost beat USC. But they came back in Colorado State, and they came back and finished ASU. And they could have lost those games very easily. And I feel like that Deion must be instilling something in those players that they are finishing strong in some of these games, which has allowed them to be 4-2. So do you think he's just a complete deadbeat, or do you think he's not as good as the hype?
Not as good as the hype, and just not as good as the hype. And look, I think they've had some breaks go their way. I think they've been outplayed in most of their games. They've won. The victory that I've been most impressed with, other than the season opener against TCU, where, again, I watched that game and thought they were outplayed and some breaks went their way, but impressive victory to open the season. I actually was impressed this week when they went on the road against a bad Arizona State team, sold out the stadium, Sun Devil Stadium, and pulled off that victory. And I know game was closer and Deion complained, but I think going on the road, hostile environment, and winning any game in the Pac-12 is impressive. But they were outplayed even in that game. And Colorado State outplayed them, and some breaks went their way. And so I think they've gotten lucky. They got another good game that they should win, Stanford. And then after that, I think it's over. I think the rest of the Pac-12 is going to run through them.
Really?
You know, there are things. Yeah, I think the rest of the Pac-12 is going to run through them. USC blew them out in the first half, then fell asleep, and USC's defense is soft, and they let Colorado create the appearance that they were close to USC. I just don't see it. The way the offense is run, I think, is improper because Deion's trying to pad the stats of his son at quarterback, who is talented, but they will not commit to a running game. And a lot of times the running game is there. He's basically throwing the offensive line on the bus and saying they can't block, but they could run the ball if they wanted to. They just choose not to because he wants his son to be in the Heisman Trophy race, and he wants his son to be the number 1 overall draft pick. And, again, he's a peewee dad coaching a Power 5 football team and, running things in a way that showcase his son. And I just think eventually it's going to blow up in their face.
And I have to agree with you on the Deion Sanders thing. I mean, I watched him play, and I'm a critic of football. Like I said, I played on defense, so we watch quarterbacks. I played against a lot of top quarterbacks. Matt Leinart. I mean, I played against from Cal. I forget Aaron Rodgers when he played at Cal when Beast Mode was there. And so I played against some guys, or at least we watched film against those guys, and I was able to see effective quarterbacks that could really sling it. And I think Deion Sanders really struggles getting the ball out of his hand and throwing the ball away and getting rid of it. When he takes off running, he does well, but Shedeur sits in the pocket way too long, and his tackle is getting his head beat in, and Shedeur is still sitting in the pocket. It's like when you say hut and you see him losing, you need to start moving. You need to start taking off. You need to start getting some space. Shedeur just sits there, man. And I was physically at the game when they play ASU because I live out here in Phoenix. And I was watching. They got outplayed. They were dominated. They seemed like a very undisciplined team as the season progresses. And I'll tell you one thing that Deion has done that's crazy to me, and I don't know why he did it. He literally changed out almost every single player on that defense. There was not one player that started the season that was on that defense. And it was mind-blowing to me that he did that to everybody but his son at safety. He literally switched out everybody. And I think that's why they struggled against ASU so bad, because all these players were different. But let me switch gears real quick. I'm going to read this article about Stephen A. Smith, and I don't know if you want to comment about it, but Stephen A. Smith takes a shot at you, man.
Now, there's a lot of people out there that want me to address other names. There's one particular person who will remain nameless, and I will not deny it. I think he's a fat, no-good bat who I despise to the core. That is not Marcellus Wiley I'm talking about. It ain't hard to figure out who the hell I'm talking about. I'm where I'm at. That particular individual is where he's at. And I'll leave it at that. And no, I'm not talking about Marcellus Wiley again. No, I'm not talking about my former colleague on First Take. No, I'm not talking about them. They ain't fat. who are seeds of the devil, wishing nothing but black folks harm. But I'll leave that for another day, for when the time is right.
He said he called you a fat, no good, a word that I won't say on the radio, who he despised. Why? Now, I think I know why Stephen A. in his feelings about you, but why do you think Stephen A. has some crazy thing to say about you like that?
Well, Stephen A. does not like me, has not liked me since 2012. When I wrote an article in 2012, he kept dropping the N-word on ESPN. He kept saying N-word, please. And I eventually wrote a column criticizing about it. He's never spoken to me since. He's been mad about it ever since. But why today or this week has he taken a shot at me? It's because he's been in hot water with AKA so-called Black Twitter, and his black audience has been criticizing him because of this dispute he's got going on with Marcellus Wiley and Max Kellerman. And so Stephen A. is just using me as a distraction. He's been taking a lot of heat, and so he said, hey, let me direct all this animus towards Jason Whitlock. He's the real bad guy. Let me change the narrative in a discussion about me. And so he's done it. I respond to him today on my show, which will air here on YouTube in about 10 minutes. So please check us out, youtube.com/Jason Whitlock. But I go into a much fuller explanation about what really went on between Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman and why that relationship didn't work. I actually defend Stephen A. for getting rid of Max Kellerman and defending him against some of the – and I work with Marcellus Wiley, have a great deal of respect for him. I was friendly with Max Kellerman. But I don't blame Stephen A. for moving on from Max Kellerman, and I explain why and explain why he's taking these pot shots at me.
100%. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on here. Jason Whitlock, ladies and gentlemen. Fearless is the podcast, and go check his YouTube channel out, Jason Whitlock on the YouTube channel, because I cannot wait to see your response. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming on, man. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Brandon.